Can you just give us some background on the police in Nigeria? Just a brief history of who they are and how they've come to operate in Nigerian society.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot for having me. It's great to be back on, particularly at such what feel like monumental times. I should say also, just to kind of set the scene, that the internet connection has been a bit funny on my side of the town since last week. So, and there've been a lot of people kind of tweeting about this at various points, and it seems kind of broadly connected to attempts to make communication a bit difficult. So, yeah, let me know somehow if this cuts off at any point, and yeah, just get the hashtags going, the Pray for Sa'eed hashtags going as soon as that happens. Yeah, I think first of all, it's worth saying that like the police specifically isn't an institution that I've covered in my own work. I mean, I've done a bit of work around police, thinking about state and federal police, but I think Nigeria's case is similar to a lot of others in Anglophone Africa, where the police as an institution came about both kind of as an attempt by the colonial state to kind of order various populations that were resisting in various forms colonization, as well as various forms of kind of indigenous. The emergence of the police kind of merged these two trends, that of the colonial states attempting to exert control, particularly in urban contexts, and of sort of prior methods of exerting that kind of control. I think the kind of critical point when we're talking about SARS specifically, though, is the 90s, or actually late 80s, entering into the early 90s. And this was a period, I think, that, I mean, a lot of the analysis you're seeing coming out hasn't quite touched on the wider economic and political context, because this is the period, of course, where structural adjustment programs were introduced in Nigeria. This is the period where Nigeria was undergoing quite a dramatic economic decline. And it's a period where, a lot of criminality became, quite widespread, particularly in urban areas. And so at this point in time, there was actually quite a bit of a public outcry demanding for more forceful policing methods. And it was not uncommon throughout the period of military dictatorship, but particularly in the 90s, to see such dramatic acts of kind of immediate extrajudicial justice, in quotes, such as police kind of harassing people in the street. This was a period where we had public executions on Bar Beach, which was a public kind of beach park that used to exist before it was privatized, and that's a story we've kind of covered in the past. So, I mean, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad emerges out of this context, where economic fortunes of a lot of Nigerians were declining, the quality of life for a lot of Nigerians, was slipping, and people were grasping on to kind of whatever forms of order kind of helped to make sense of a quite turbulent period, or help to regulate what seemed like social disorder in quite a turbulent period. So, I mean, it's out of that context that SARS emerges, put in place by an authoritarian government to kind of respond to this wider desire for some sort of order in the midst of political and economic and security turmoil at the time. And since then, I mean, as you know, and as a lot of the coverage has shown, there's been a lot of resistance to the ways in which SARS has carried out its attempts at restoring this sort of public order. So this isn't the first time we're seeing protests emerge specifically calling for the disbandment of SARS. In fact, we've seen that prior to these occasions, as a result of public pressure, that SARS had either been, what they said, disbanded, dissolved, all sorts of kind of various euphemisms for ended. But never really had we seen any kind of concrete indication that this unit was over and that sort of more fundamental reforms were ongoing to make police more accountable. Rather, we continue to see SARS snatching up young people, particularly, and putting them through all sorts of very heinous, violent, or at the very least, extremely embarrassing experiences. So, leading up to the one, the particular case that occurred in Delta State, I believe, right around October, the start of October, which went viral and contributed immensely to this most recent wave of protests.